Hello, it's great to have you here. Today, I want to share an exciting excerpt from a live event we held a few weeks ago. In that session, we dove into the score for Cape Fear, composed by the brilliant Bernard Herrmann. We will take a deep look at his music through the lens of interval theory. So, if you're familiar with Herrmann's work but want to understand more about how it all works and connects, this video is for you. Let's dive in. Let's tackle these things one line after another. Now, let me first explain to you what I mean by these numbers. All of those numbers, they stand for chromatic steps or minor seconds. So if you read -5, this describes a sequence from one note to the next that goes down by 5 chromatic steps. That is from the E going down to the B. Then from here, it reads -1, that is the B flat, and it reads -6. So a minus sign indicates the descending direction. This is important to know, so I'm not referring to diatonic intervals. So let's stick to chromatic steps. And we could almost say that Cape Fear is a study in chromatic steps because this whole piece is packed with ones. Let me actually point out that HF stands for horizontal formula. And that is the DNA, the description of a line, no matter where you start it. It can start on any note. As long as you follow the same horizontal formula, it will be the same line. Now here it reads -5, -1, -6. And it's interesting to see that this describes an octave, right? So we have a 6 interval here. If we combine the first two numbers and then another 6. The same thing happens the moment we go to the variation of this horizontal formula. Now we have a 5 if we combine the first two numbers and a 7. So again, we outline the octave as our outside interval in both versions. So what happens really is we move the one interval around in the middle. We just shift it or transpose it. And if you already followed some of the techniques, especially the ones that my partner in crime, Thomas Jace Jones, went into with his matrix theory sessions, then you know the ones, the position where the ones occur defines the tonal center. Now in here, by moving the one up and down, we already dilute the tonal center. And that is an interesting technique that Bernard Herrmann does throughout the whole piece. Very seldom you have the impression that this is all based on a clear tonal center and it follows some strict progressions in harmony. It actually does not. And partly the reason for that is he is very flexible with where he puts the ones. Now, also interesting in the first line is to see that we are dealing with 3 bars. And the second line brings in 5 bars. So you see by the rehearsal letter, this is actually where a new section starts. So we have a plain 8-bar introduction, but it's not split equally, like a 4-bar and another 4-bar section. It is split into 3 and 5. And that also gives some ideas about form. So again, he is blurring the lines. So everybody who listens to at least a lot of pop music would expect chunks in bars of 4. That is pretty much the structure that every pop song follows. Now he starts with 3 bars and he completes the 3 bars with 5 bars to eventually end up with 8. And that is already a very nice and elegant way of presenting the introduction. Now, let me quickly replay you just the first line so that you get the idea of what this sounded like. And please pay attention to where the ones occur. Here it's from B to B flat and then from C to the natural B. Now, let's get to the second line here. That is why I actually let it play through. You recognized the chromatic lines on the outsides. Of course you did. What you probably did not recognize is what interval those outside lines actually create and what this does to how you perceive the tonal center. So let's quickly check what is going on with the blue lines. That's the chromatic line down there and the chromatic line up there. So we start on an E in both cases. And then this outlines an octave, or more than one octave, but let's be practical. Let's call this a 12 in an octave position. Now, the moment we go up and down simultaneously, we create an interval, a vertical interval between those two guys that is a 10, right? From the F to the E flat. Now we continue the same thing, and from the F sharp to the D, that's an 8. Now here, it's a 6, it's a 4, and now you've spotted the pattern. That's a 2, and here we end up with the octave position again, and it starts over, right? So we are at the octave. That's again a 10, 8, and a 6. Now, why is this important? This is pretty much the whole tone scale, what you get to hear vertically. Although the chromatic line, this is what you perceive horizontally. That is where the energy is flowing. And a chromatic line is the strongest line you can write. Everybody can follow a chromatic line. Now, the moment you combine two chromatic lines, you step on the outside interval. And that is what he does with those movements, and he outlines the whole tone scale. One of the very nice properties of the whole tone scale is it does not have a one interval, which means there is no clear tonal center. And this is important to understand because he actually started playing around with this one interval and where it appears. And now he plays around with the one interval and uses it to blur these tonal centers that you get to hear. And that is pretty much happening in those outside lines. Now in the middle, the red part, you're seeing it's always a 2 interval or a major second in diatonic terms, and it resolves chromatically. Again, this is all chromatic stuff. So the B flat goes to the natural B, the A flat goes down to the G. And this pretty much continues for the next 2 bars. So the first 3 bars follow the same pattern. And also the distance to the upper chromatic line stays the same. Again, this is not very obvious if you just listen to it, but the distance between the top note of the 2 interval and the chromatic line is always a 6. So E to B flat, that's a 6 down. D to A flat, that's a 6 down. C to F sharp, that's a 6 down. So it's a locked interval. And a 6 interval is dominant. And that means it has an unstable character. It wants to move, and it emphasizes the nature of the 2, which is also a dominant interval. A 2 is not stable and it wants to resolve. And this is the moment now where I want to transition to a little interval theory technique down there. And in here, I just give you some ideas of how the 2 can resolve. And after we more or less examined this whole line here, I will give you the concept so that you don't have to remember any of these notes. You just will know how this thing resolves naturally. Because now we are stepping into the nature of the intervals. They actually do have a nature. And this is not very obvious if you come only from a diatonic point of view. Now, first, let me quickly play you the treble only, because this shows you already the ways how a 2 can resolve. And it's interesting because some of them sound very strong to you, like this one here, for example. That is the authentic cadence. Welcome to the world of diatonic chord progressions. Now let me continue to these other ones here. So I'm going to start again from this guy. Now, this doesn't sound like a resolution, right? But let me give you more context, and then you will understand that actually every bar sounds like that's the only way the 2 wants to go because it is so strong. Okay, this one was right. No, wait, this one actually was right. So the shortcut is definitely they are all right. And it feels right, it sounds right. But if you just listen to the treble, it's really great. It's not obvious at all. Well, try to bring this all together into one tonal center. And actually, to make it easier for you, here are again the final chords that we moved into. And if I played you those in a sequence, then you realize out of a sudden that the 2 can go many places. That's the one that everybody does, by the way. Some of the guys know that you can resolve chromatically. That is this guy here. This one, by the way, is the reflection of the authentic cadence. And this one is just a pedal tone on top. This always works. But these are all the ways that we just moved into. And if you listen to those structures in one go, then you realize how flexible this is in terms of tonal centers. And if you're interested in exploring the 2 interval and learning how to modulate freely to any tonal center, be sure to check out the video I'm linking to. I'm Frank, a pro composer and co-founder of the Music Interval Theory Academy. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with me, and I hope you will come back for more interval theory and great composition techniques. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and best always.